Today, we're joined by Brian Bailey of Prestonwood Baptist Church. Together, we'll discuss how to efficiently and effectively train volunteers, as well as how to prepare for some of the most common challenges when building your volunteer team. Hi, I'm Donnie Bronner, owner and CEO of Paragon 360. I'm here today with Brian Bailey, who's the Director of Media at Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas. Between 2017 and 2021, he was also the president of the Metro Media Ministers Association, a group of media and communications leaders from Southern Baptist churches all over the country. Brian is a sought-after speaker in the technical ministries arena, and he has spoken and taught at international training events in India and other parts of Eastern Asia. Brian has also led media ministries at First Baptist Dallas and Cross Church in Rogers, Arkansas, and was formerly the technical director at Ouachita Baptist University. He has a Bachelor of Church Music degree from Ouachita and a Master's in Communications from Dallas Baptist University. Brian, welcome. It's great to have you here at Full Circle.
Thank you, Donnie. I'm excited to be here today.
So, as we get started in talking about this, where should a ministry begin when it comes to developing an organized training program?
You know, it's interesting because I think a lot of ministries assume that the first place they need to start is the training itself. They want to get somebody on a camera, on a soundboard, on a lighting console, whatever it is. But in reality, it's more important to take a step back and make sure that as a ministry, and this isn't just true for media ministries, I think it's true for any ministry, church as a whole, take a step back and figure out what is it that we do? What is our mission? And to go as far as actually developing a mission statement. Developing core values. The mission statement is kind of the hook that explains what it is that we do. You know, when somebody comes up to me and says, what am I going to be doing in media if I volunteer in this program, in this ministry, we're able to say from the top, this is who we are. And it gets them excited about it. Beyond that, having some sort of core values, something that establishes here's how we interact as a team. This works really well, obviously, for paid staff, but also for volunteers. We have to have a point of reference that we can all say, we all value excellence, so we're going to do things with excellence, and we can build off of that core value. We all value humility. We all value passion, whatever the case may be. We want to build off of those core values on top of that. That just helps establish the why of what we do, and it gets them excited about doing the ministry, doing the work in that ministry before we even touch a camera.
Exactly, and the why is just so critical to that. You know, even when we do projects, that's the question we're asking. Why, if we're going to spend all this money and renovate this space, why are we doing this? And that really helps us in the design process. So you were talking about the mission statement. Can you give us an example of what Prestonwood Media Team, what is the mission statement that you guys operate with?
Sure. At Prestonwood, our mission statement is the Prestonwood Media Team members are conduits of God's Word, proclaiming the gospel around the world as we enhance ministry and worship environments with excellent audio, video, and lighting. And that mission statement is something, by the way, that we came up with as a group with the volunteers. You know, that's not something that I sit down in my office and say, this is what our mission's gonna be. And then I tell everybody, guess what, this is our mission. When I first got to Prestonwood, I pulled all the volunteers together and we talked about, okay, guys, what do we do? What is our mission? And we pulled that together as a team, which gives them buy-in. That gives them ownership in that. It's not being dictated to them. And that goes a long way. And when I was at First Baptist Dallas, our mission statement was similar, but different because every church has its own way of doing those things. So it's not just a rubber stamp.
So that's a good preamble to this. So how do you actually approach creating the training program itself?
Yeah, it's once again, you don't just jump right into the, I'm going to get on a camera and show you how this works. I have three stages of this. There's spiritual, there's philosophical, and there's cognitive elements to the training program. The spiritual kind of lays the groundwork. The spiritual is the part where we explain from a biblical perspective, this is why we have a media department. This is why we have cameras in the room. This is what is important about getting the gospel out to the world. So we go through that, and it just makes sure everybody gets in a mindset of, yes, we're doing production, but this isn't like production that happens in the world. This is production that's happening in the church, and there's different elements to that. The next part of this is the philosophical, and that's actually dealing with what we already talked about, which is the mission statement and the core values. But it also talks about how we're going to act as a team. At Prestonwood, we use Planning Center Online for all of our scheduling, and so we tell our volunteers, all right, when you receive an email that asks you to serve, we want you to respond within 48 hours. That's just what we ask of you. And so we kind of set the ground rules for how we operate as a team. Then we get into the actual cognitive elements of the training, where we talk about the camera. That's the thing that everybody wants to get to. But if you jump to the cognitive before you do all of the rest, then you're really just talking about technical gear and not the thing that makes the media ministry at your church or the technical ministry at your church an important part of the ministry.
Right. And given that every church has completely different needs, completely different scenarios, what are some of the key elements of training that are really true for any size ministry?
Yeah, it's something that I try and talk about a lot when I'm talking to groups of people about this. I've been fortunate to serve at very large churches with very large teams. Others are very fortunate to serve at small churches with very small teams, because there's many days where I would rather be dealing with 2 or 3 people than 25 people.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what size church you're at. All of these principles apply. You just scale it to whatever works for your particular situation. So for me, when I come to a new church or when I'm working with somebody to help them figure this out, the first thing we have to do is determine what is the need. What are the different positions that we even have that need to be filled? What is it that we're trying to do? So do I have an audio position and a graphics position and a lighting position? Is that what it is? Does the lighting position need an A2 as well? Very basic stuff, just figuring out what does our crew need to look like. Then going to each position and deciding, what does this person need to know? What is the outline of things that we need to train them? One of the things that we skip a lot of times when we start training is figuring out, what are the elements? What order do they need to be taught in? What do we need this person to know? Something that's really helpful if you have, especially if you have advanced technology, don't feel like you have to teach that person everything about it. You know, when you walk up to a lighting console for the first time, or sometimes an audio console, there's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of things there. Sometimes as leaders, we feel like that person needs to know everything about that. In case anything goes wrong at all, they need to do it all. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, lighting, for example, if you're programming lights during the week, on Sunday, you need a person who can sit down at the lighting console, turn it on, get the moving lights powered up, and then hit go at the right time. So a level 1 camera operator, a level 1 audio operator, a level 1 lighting operator just is able to do what it takes to make Sunday morning happen. Then you build from there. But everything starts with that training outline so you can decide what it is that they need to know.
Right. So what would you say, is one of the biggest challenges in trying to put a whole program together like this?
There's a lot of challenges. The biggest challenge is for those of us who have a lot of technical experience, which usually, if you're in charge of this ministry, that you have technical experience, the hardest thing is to put yourself in their shoes and remember what it's like to not know what a camera is or how a soundboard works. So what typically happens is we jump in too far into the process and leave them behind. There's a study out there called Bloom's taxonomy, which talks about how anybody learns something. And the way I equate it is, when you first learn to read and write, you learn the alphabet. So you learn the letters. You learn how to put those together in words. Then you learn how to put words together into sentences, and then you figure out how to make those sentences more complex and then put those into paragraphs and so on. So what happens with us is we jump in into sentences, and we say, well, here's a sentence and here's how you make it more complex, but they don't even know the alphabet yet.
Right.
So we jump into a camera. I see it all the time, especially with volunteers helping other volunteers. They'll jump in and say, now, remember, the pastor moves really crazy sometimes, so you got to do it like this. And meanwhile, the person doesn't even know how to unlock the camera. They don't know how to turn on the viewfinder. You have to start at the very, very basics. And that's the most challenging thing that we have to do, is kind of reset everything and say, okay, step one, you know, this is a football, you know, the famous speech there.
Right.
You have to start from those basics.
So we work in, you know, obviously different churches all over the country and lots of different size churches. And this is a topic, this whole, you know, volunteer training thing is a topic we deal with all the time. Why do you think more churches don't really have these types of training programs in place?
Really, because it's hard. It's hard to do. It takes a ton of time. It takes a ton of investment. I mean, an example, a couple weeks ago, I mean, we're constantly tweaking our training program. I had to take 2.5 hours and sit down and look at our camera training outline and basically revamp it. And 2.5 hours of my day in a week like what I had last week especially, that's a lot. That's a big investment. So not everybody is willing to sit down and invest the time to do that. I also think a lot of people just don't know where to start. The conversation we just had, I hope that helps a lot of folks, but sometimes it's daunting. And you know, it's easier just to say, you know what, come on, get there about an hour early before the service. We'll show you how the camera works and you'll be fine, you know, which is not fair to the volunteer and it's not fair to you either. For a lot of churches, there's also an investment of money that goes into this. You know, if you're really going to build your team, you're going to do the little things. You're going to have that monthly or quarterly volunteer dinner meeting. You're going to make t-shirts for them that they can wear when they're serving. You're going to have the Christmas party. That stuff costs actual money, but it's an investment. So I think that's the big reason that I run into most, is people just aren't willing to make that investment of time and money and energy.
Right. If someone had people, you know, coming in tomorrow to learn how to operate all of this audio, video, lighting equipment, what is the one thing that you would tell them that they can do immediately to provide some beneficial teaching?
Yeah, so I mean, I do get that a lot. Like, we've only been talking for a few minutes.
Right.
I can talk about this for a couple of hours with no problem. And there's always kind of that look from people at the end of, okay, that's great, that seems like a lot. What can I do right now?
Right. Church tomorrow.
You know, if I have to do that, and that's okay, the thing that everybody can do right now, even if you do already have a good training program, is checklists. It is amazing what checklists will do for you. And I'm talking about, you know, when the technical director running the video switcher sits down on Sunday morning, he has a laminated piece of paper next to him with a dry erase marker, and he's going through and he's saying, all right, the keys are assigned properly, check. The auxes are assigned properly, check. You know, when the camera operator gets there, we have a little checklist that hangs on the camera to remind them, unlock the camera, make sure the brakes are loose, adjust your tensions, check the settings on the viewfinder, whatever it may be, and they're able to go through and check all of those off. What checklist does for you is actually several things. One, it makes the operator, and I say operator because it's not just volunteers. I mean, I direct on Sunday mornings sometimes I'll find myself in a different position. Doesn't matter how much training you have, it's nice to have that checklist to remind you, oh yeah, I need to make sure this is routed properly. I would have forgotten that. The checklist is a great way to, whether you're new volunteers or have been doing it for a while, to make sure people feel comfortable and get it done the way that you need them to get it done.
Well, it's the same way pilots use checklists. It's not because they don't know how to fly the plane, but they can't afford a miss. And it's that repetition of going through and making sure they've checked all the boxes. So Thank you so much for your time today and your insights. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was fun to be in the studio. This is my first time in here, and you guys have done an amazing job of setting this up. And I appreciate you guys creating a tool that other people can use to learn. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for joining us today. For more insights, go to paragon360.com or join us on YouTube.